Welcome to Strange Encounters, the YouTube channel that explores all things unexplained and mysterious. In this episode, we delve into the stories of real people who claim to have been abducted by aliens and those that have witnessed sightings of UFOs. From encounters with extraterrestrial beings to strange lights in the sky, these stories are sure to send chills down your spine. Our goal is to provide a platform for people to share their first-hand experiences with the unexplained, the unknown, and the supernatural. We believe that everyone has a story to tell, and we're dedicated to bringing those stories to a wider audience. We invite you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video. Don't forget to click the notification bell icon so that you get notified each time we post a new and exciting episode. Thank you for supporting Strange Encounters. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to continue exploring the unknown. So, sit back, relax, and join us as we dive into what people claim are their own true tales of the strange and unexplained. Abduction in California, 2015, by Deleted User. In July of 2015, back when I was 19, I lived in a house in Southport, Sacramento with 3 other friends. I woke up one night to a light coming through the ceiling of my room, and it lifted me out of my bed. Next thing I know, I'm in some kind of chair and unable to control my body, like I was drugged. There were guys that were not human, but gray people with large black almond-shaped eyes doing stuff with what seemed like medical instruments and machines. I was terrified. I was unarmed, naked, and unable to move. I was so scared. One of them was touching the machine that put a tube down my throat and into my stomach. His hand got close to my face because he had to adjust something holding my head in place. I remember getting a good look at his hand and eyes. They had long fingers with pads at the tips, sort of like salamanders do, and they don't have fingernails. Their skin is gray, but kind of a powdery, translucent gray. I'm certain that if I was able to move, I could have easily harmed or even killed him and his crew with my bare hands, as they didn't seem very strong physically. This is probably why they did something to prevent me from being able to move. My first reaction was to fight back, but I couldn't. They had large heads with small necks, so small and thin it didn't make sense. Their arms and fingers were long and skinny too. I was in a chair with my head and jaw held by something, so I didn't see their feet. I'd say the tallest probably stood about the height of my lowest rib, and for reference, I'm 5'10". The tube machine sucked out the food I ate earlier that day and then was pulled out of me. I don't remember how I got there, but then remembered being in a cage made of some kind of metal that reminded me of aluminum, in a room with curved walls. In front of me was a man who looked a lot like a human talking to a gray person on a window that was lit up as a screen like a hologram, but not like the Star Wars kind, more like a video call. The man was tall and looked like a human, except that his skin was very white and his hair was blonde and platinum. I've never seen a person with that kind of snow-white skin color before. He spoke with a gray person on the holoscreen in a language I didn't understand. He wore a blue flight uniform of some kind. The man was obviously military of some sort, judging by his uniform. The gray person spoke in a language that sounded like birds chirping. Once the call was over, the holoscreen turned into a different display with symbols, and the man turned and walked to me. He crouched down and spoke to me in plain American English and said to me, "Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to get you out of here and take you home." I was so happy to hear that. He opened the cage, and the next thing I know, I fell on top of my bed, with my back hitting the mattress first. I immediately got out of bed right after I fell. It was morning when I fell in my bed, and I rushed to put on clothes and ran 2 miles to my brother's apartment in West Sacramento to talk to him about it. I never believed in aliens or anything related to weird science until that night. My brother, on the other hand, would stay up late and listen to Coast AM and look up weird stuff like that on the web. so I knew he would listen to what I had to say and possibly help calm me down, but I was wrong. He saw how afraid I was and told me it was probably just a bad dream. I didn't want to believe what happened to me either, but if it were a dream, then why did my throat hurt so bad? I moved to Washington the next month, and the day of my flight, I woke up from a dream about fireballs and orbs with the strangest pocked burns on my face, hands, and arms, and I had faint scars from them. Since then, I've seen flying fireballs above my current residence, and I've had some items like shoes and belt go mysteriously missing from my home. I also have a photo on my phone of a black cube spaceship I saw hiding in the clouds that I took just outside my residence. To this day, I don't know who the man was, what he was, or who or what the gray people with big black eyes are. My reason for sharing this traumatic experience with you all isn't to get you to believe in the existence of aliens. It's to raise awareness that this happens to people, and I didn't believe 100% that it happened until it happened to me. Whether or not you choose to believe in aliens doesn't change the fact that they have affected other people's lives, including mine. I'm going to share this on the Reddit sub Abductions, and maybe I could get help there. It's not something that I've been able to just talk about, as I'm afraid of being looked at differently, especially in my professional career. I know what I know is real, and it's frustrating to be looked at like a crazy man for being honest and open about something. That's been the real traumatic part about it, the way other people treat people who talk about it, who seek help for it. I Am Friends with Aliens by Live Designs. So, I finally decided to tell my story. If you've read any research about abductions, you may have heard my story before under another alias, as I have participated in university studies. Well, here it goes. When my mother was a few months pregnant with me, she was informed at a normal checkup that I was brain dead in the womb. Several doctors convinced her that she should abort me because I would basically be a vegetable. However, a random doctor called her one day and said he would like to start a treatment to help me. A few months later, I was born completely healthy and with no brain activity issues. Throughout elementary school, I experienced blackouts and memory loss. However, my physical body doesn't black out. Through friends and family, I discovered there is another person residing in my body. At about the age of 12, I'm at a girls' youth camp with my best friend. Because we were rebellious and curious, my friend and I end up sneaking out of the tent we were sharing to go out into the woods. Sadly, nothing interesting happened. We eventually go back to our tent and fall asleep, and this is where things got weird. I wake up what feels like a few hours later, lying on a table in my pajamas. I'm in a dimly lit room. There's almost nothing around me but a metal table. Then I look to my left. On my left is a huge cylinder tank filled with some sort of liquid, and my friend is naked floating in it. I freak out, and I guess I passed out. When I opened my eyes again, I was naked in the tank. I blinked a few times, tried to move, and passed out again. I proceeded to have a normal dream that I vividly remembered to this day. When we woke up that morning, we talked about our nightmares and realized we had pretty much the same one. At that point, I thought I was a government experiment. Over the next few years, I was abducted over and over again. Eventually, they slipped up, and I ended up figuring out that they weren't human. To make a very long story short, over the past 8 years, I have become very good friends with these aliens. They are tall, white, with glowing skin and large eyes. They are like family to me, and I've been told that they have been watching me from before I was born, and that the doctor who contacted my mother was a friend of theirs who used their advanced technology to heal my brain. In order to stimulate my mind, they put one of their people in my brain. This best friend, who I have with me all the time, is not human. They are not Greys. They are a very different race of aliens. Greys do exist, however, but my alien family is not friendly with them, nor do they believe their practices towards humans are right. We know we might get hate for this testimony, but we will deal with it in our own way. Basically, we just want to know if there are others like us. I have been ridiculed for this, and some friends think I am crazy. They don't understand that this is real, and it has caused me to experience a lot of emotional distress. I wrote this to get my story out there because I felt alone and I wanted to find others like me. I saw an alien in my room and showed them a meme by Alien PTSD. I made this Reddit account 6 months ago because I needed to get this story off my chest. This experience was starting to affect my relationship, and I desperately needed to tell someone and move on. I decided at that time not to go through with posting about my experience because I didn't want to seem cringe or have a bunch of people tell me I was lying. Fast forward to today, and I'm finally feeling brave enough to share. I'm a female. I was 22 at the time and in my last year of engineering school. I was still living in my parents' house. Since then, I've moved out and got a job in another city. Back in April 2022, I was laying in bed relaxing and had drifted off to sleep around 1 a.m. I'm a night owl and typically stay up well into the night. Sometime after I fell asleep, I was awakened by someone grabbing me from behind in an awkward hugging motion, like a bear hug but more awkward and grabby. I sleep on my side and usually face the wall, so I needed to turn around to see who was touching me. My mom usually gets up for work super early, so I assumed it was her coming into my room to hug and say goodbye for the day. I was horribly wrong. When I started to turn around, my vision was still blurry and I couldn't see anyone standing directly next to my bed. I was confused because I had just felt someone touching me. Before I had even finished fully turning to see, my eyes had wandered to the corner of my room near my desk and my body froze immediately. There was this being floating directly above my desk. I'm not even sure if that's the right word to use, but it looked humanoid. It was slightly shorter than me. I'm 5'3" and had a larger than normal head, a tiny slit mouth, and their skin was blackish, star-speckled color. I don't even know how to describe it, but it looked almost airy, like if I poked them, my finger would go right through. I felt like I was looking into some sort of cosmic gas. It was really strange, but the most prominent feature I noticed were their gigantic, deep black eyes. The eyes somehow managed to be a deeper black than their skin. They were so huge and very striking to see. When I saw them hovering over my desk, I made eye contact and my whole body froze. My immediate instinct was to get up and run away. I couldn't move my arms and legs no matter how much I tried. I was frozen still. When I made eye contact, all the ambient noise in the room was gone. It was completely silent, and we were just staring into each other's eyes. It was like time had completely frozen in that moment. While I was staring into the entity's eyes, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt the most primal fear I could have ever felt. I felt like I had suddenly reverted into a caveman or something. I felt this horrible dread, a horrible eldritch terror. I kept thinking that I needed to get up and run. I needed to get away, but I couldn't move. And then I heard this message in my head. I can't exactly describe how I heard it. It wasn't as if someone said it to me, but as if it was directly planted into my own thoughts. It said, "Don't be afraid." And I thought to myself, what in the biblically accurate angel F is going on? I was confused because I heard this message, but the being itself did not speak. Their mouth didn't move. In fact, I don't remember any sort of facial expression ever being conveyed other than the creepy, intense stare. I felt a sort of calmness wash over me, and I blacked out a few moments after that. The next thing I remember is being seated at my desk. The being was gone, but I could still hear these messages in my head. I'm assuming that they realized how scared I was and decided to hide themselves to avoid frightening me again. I can't exactly remember the entire conversation word for word or how it even happened, but I remember the gist of it. Basically, I was shown these images of real-life war, maybe the war in Ukraine, and images of war in things like cartoons and media, and I guess it wanted to know my opinions about them and the way the images made me feel. I can't remember my response, but I remember feeling that they were mildly satisfied with it. For a moment, I felt like there might have been a third presence in the conversation, like someone else was observing, but I'm not completely sure. At some point during the encounter, I felt awkward, and I grabbed my phone to look at Reddit, just looking for something to calm myself down. Nobody was in the room, but it still felt like I was being watched intensely. It's worth noting here that I have very severe social anxiety, and I was very scared, but I didn't feel like I was in danger anymore. Anyway, I ended up finding some stupid meme, I don't remember which one, and I was laughing at it. And I got a feeling like the being was questioning my behavior, like they seemed intrigued by the way I was acting. I remember holding my phone up in the air like, look, not knowing where they were, but trying to show them anyway. There was a moment of silence, and then the next thing I knew, I was back in bed again like nothing ever happened, in the blink of an eye. My phone was lying next to me on the bed, and the screen was off. I grabbed it to look at the time. It was like 3 or 4 a.m. I checked my tabs to make sure I wasn't going insane, and sure enough, Reddit was still open. I don't think they liked my meme. After this happened, I felt like I had been severely traumatized. I slept with a light on for several months afterwards. I talked about it constantly, so much so that it started to overwhelm my girlfriend with my behavior. I was paranoid all the time. I couldn't fall asleep without checking the same corner over and over again. I spent months researching other people who've had similar encounters, just trying to convince myself that I'm not crazy. I still feel paranoid a lot of the time, and sometimes I convince myself that it wasn't real, and I was just daydreaming, or it was sleep paralysis, but my body knows the truth. I still feel that horrible dread feeling when I think about what happened, especially when I think of looking into their eyes. My hands will shake, and I start to sweat, and my body goes numb. It's the only thing that keeps me 100% sure that it wasn't just a dream. It's gotten a lot easier to manage now that some time has passed. This experience has completely changed the way I see reality and consciousness, and made me ask myself some tough questions about our existence on this planet. Giant V-shaped aircraft sighting by Slippin' Yeen. Until today, I hadn't realized that this sighting was a somewhat common phenomenon. Call me crazy, but hear me out. I saw a V-shaped craft fly over me during a bonfire when I was 7 or 8 years old. It subconsciously changed the way I looked at the world without ever truly realizing what it was that I had seen. It slowly passed right above me in the night sky while remaining completely silent the entire time, and it had multiple lights on the bottom of it. It wasn't your typical red and green lights, but instead soft white lights with a bit of a bluish tint. Other than those lights, I was only able to make out the silhouettes of the large V-shaped craft and a few much smaller craft surrounding that ship in some sort of formation. I hate to be that guy, but if you have seen Star Wars, it genuinely looked identical to the shape of one of the big Imperial ships in the movie, apart from not having any noticeable thrusters or propulsion system in the back or anywhere for that matter. I couldn't tell you much of what I remember about the smaller craft, considering I was staring mostly at the gigantic ship, and I couldn't confidently say they were separate UFOs either. But the objects moved alongside the giant UFO in perfect synchronization from what I recall. I don't remember being super confused. I think I was more just amazed. As a kid who was born in 2000, I was a huge fan of the Star Wars prequels growing up, And while I was aware that the movies weren't depicted from reality, I never questioned the possibility of life on other planets or the possibility of someone on Earth having the capability of creating a massive ship like that. I'd love to say that I was a skeptic up until that moment, but I didn't have much time or much of a choice to decide on that matter after what I saw at that young age. I vividly remember exactly where and how I was sitting during that moment, which was in one of our folding lawn chairs about 8 feet or so in front of the small section of woods behind me in my backyard. And because I'm able to remember that, and knowing the location of my old house, I can confidently say the UFO was moving in the northern direction when it appeared over me. I remember all 3 of my older brothers went inside the house just a few minutes before the ships began flying over. They all went inside, and I decided to stay by the fire alone for a few extra minutes, which wasn't abnormal by any means for me to do, even back then. I can't explain everything, and I can't rationalize any of the reactions I had as a kid, given that my thought process was completely different compared to now. All that I know is what I saw with my own eyes while leaning my head back and gazing toward the stars. As I said, I remember being amazed while the giant ship passed directly over my head, but I was neither scared nor excited about what I was seeing. Amazed is the best word I can use to describe that feeling. The debate of whether aliens or UFOs are real or not wasn't a thing in my family's household, at least not before this night. So now, this is the best way I can rationalize my reaction, or lack of a reaction. I didn't have the instinct of jumping out of my chair and running inside to get my brothers to look at what I was seeing, because I wasn't aware whether things like this existed or not, let alone were being debated. I sat there and watched everything pass over me in awe. But shortly after it was over is when my memory becomes foggy again. All I know is what I didn't do that night. I didn't run inside after it all happened, ready to tell everyone in my family about what I saw. And I didn't stay up all night thinking about it. From my knowledge, I'm assuming I just went back inside at some point and fell asleep like any other night. But honestly, I just don't know. I also can't recall whether I told anybody the next day or even the next few years about it, but I think I kept it to myself for a long while, and again, I couldn't tell you why, other than thinking, how could I possibly explain something like that? Many years later, when I was probably about 15 or so, I told a couple of my siblings about what I saw. I didn't get much of a reaction from them other than some criticism and laughs, which made me all the more put off about sharing my experiences any further. Since then, I've only told a very select number of people about this, maybe 2 or 3 friends, and they were much more open to the idea, but even then, I could always feel their belief withering away the more I described that night to them in detail. Nowadays, I never sit around and think, did that happen? Or did my brain just make that up? The short blip in time where that memory lies in my brain is so vivid and so engraved that I know for a fact I wouldn't have remembered this as well as I have if it wasn't something that I saw with my own 2 eyes. I'm not looking for people to say they believe me, and I encourage any comments or questions about anything I mentioned. I do, however, hope that someone has had a similar experience and can confirm what I saw. Whether it was the same night near my location or 4,000 miles away, I would love to hear about it. Welcome to a special feature of Strange Encounters we like to call Famous Encounters. In this segment, we take a closer look at some of the most well-known encounters between humans and the mysterious, unexplained entities that continue to fascinate and intrigue us. In this episode, we'll be diving into the Allagash Abduction Incident, a case that has become one of the most famous alien abduction stories of all time. From its origins in the forests of Maine to its impact on popular culture, we'll explore the details of this truly strange encounter. So, sit back, relax, and prepare to be transported to a world of mystery and intrigue as we take a deep dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the annals of paranormal research. Famous Encounters: The Allagash UFO Abductions of 1976. The Allagash UFO Abductions is a well-known incident that took place in 1976 involving 4 young men who reported being abducted by aliens during a camping trip in the Allagash wilderness of northern Maine. The incident is one of the most famous alleged abduction cases in American history and has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and television shows. On August 20th, 1976, 4 friends, Charles Foltz, Chuck Rack, Jim Weiner, and Jack Weiner, set out on a camping trip to the Allagash wilderness in Maine. The men were all in their early 20s and had been friends since childhood. They were all experienced outdoorsmen and had previously been on several camping trips together. On the 3rd night of their trip, the men decided to do some night fishing on Eagle Lake. While they were out on the water, they noticed a bright light in the sky that seemed to be following them. At first, they thought it might be a helicopter or an airplane, but as the light got closer, they realized it was something they had never seen before. According to their accounts, the light suddenly moved towards them and enveloped their boat in a blinding white light. The next thing they knew, they were back on shore with no memory of how they got there. Over the next few days, the men began experiencing strange and disturbing dreams. They would dream about being taken aboard a spacecraft and examined by alien beings with large black eyes. They also reported feeling a sense of paralysis during these encounters and being unable to move or speak. As their dreams became more vivid and intense, the men began to suspect that they had actually been abducted by aliens. It wasn't until 1988 that they sought out the help of a local UFO investigator named Raymond Fowler, who hypnotized them to try and recover any memories that may have been repressed. Under hypnosis, all 4 men provided detailed accounts of being taken aboard a UFO and examined by strange beings. Their descriptions of the beings were consistent and included details such as large, black eyes, gray skin, and small, thin bodies. The Allagash UFO abductions gained national attention in 1978 when it was featured on an episode of the TV show In Search Of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy. The case has since become one of the most well-known alleged abduction cases in American history and has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and television shows. Skeptics have argued that the men's experience could have been the result of sleep paralysis or hallucinations brought on by the remote wilderness setting and the men's own beliefs about UFOs. However, the men themselves have maintained that they truly believe they were abducted by aliens and that their experiences were real. In 2016, one of the men involved gave an interview in which he cast doubt on the experiences of the other men. Charles Rack reported that while he did see a UFO, during his hypnosis session, he did not remember any details of the claimed abduction. The other men involved were able to provide more details under hypnosis, but Rack reported that he just went along with the others in hopes that he might be able to gain money from reporting his experience. Despite the controversy surrounding the case, the Allagash UFO abductions remain one of the most fascinating and mysterious incidents in the history of UFO sightings and alien encounters. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Strange Encounters. We hope these stories have given you some insight into the unexplained and mysterious world of alien abductions and UFO sightings. If you enjoyed this video, even though we don't like to ask, please share, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Your feedback helps us create better content and lets us know what you want to see more of. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. We are always on the lookout for new stories to share, so if you have a strange encounter you'd like to share, please feel free to leave it in the comments below or send it to our email address, verystrangeencounters@gmail.com. We love to hear from our viewers, and we appreciate your contributions to this channel. Thank you again for watching, and we look forward to bringing you more strange and unexplained stories in the future.